The primary purpose of Innovative AAC Solutions, the podcast, is to educate and inform. The views expressed during all episodes are solely those of the individuals involved and do not constitute educational or medical advice. They are not necessarily the views of Special School District of St. Louis County. Hey guys, and welcome back for episode 3 of Innovative AAC Solutions. I'm Laura Hayes.
And I'm Cheryl Livingston.
And I can't even tell you guys how excited I am about today's episode. You don't play favorites with your kids, but this might be my favorite child.
Yeah. Well, or if anything, and again, we'll get into more what it's all about, but it's something that Laura definitely has, been passionate about learning, and she's brought me into this too. So now it's like, oh my gosh, there's stuff out there I need to know. And I have to say, guys, remember, I am the oldest living SLP, and this is like, not new as in somebody just created it, but new as in, we didn't really talk about this before. So I love it. I'm excited.
But it's not like it's new in the sense that the research isn't new. It's been around a long time. It's just, I think it's kind of making its way now that social media is a bigger presence in the world of what we're going to talk about, which is Gestalt Language Processing. And so we're going to talk about that today. Our interviewee, Alexandria Zachos, is amazing. She works with Marge Blanc, who did the research, and she was a protege of her, and she's just got a wonderful platform on Instagram and her own website, meaningfulspeech.com. It's just so insightful. It's so practical. It's very hands-on, very concrete resources.
And I think it applies to a lot more of our kids than maybe we realize, we'll talk more later about what all she talked about, but that's where, and again, I want to say Marge, I watched a webinar with her, and she talked about how the research was kind of like 88, 89 or something. So I want you people to know that I had already graduated. That doesn't mean I shouldn't have still been learning, but I had already graduated before this research was out. So I want at least a little bit of an, excuse.
A buffer.
I'm going to do better now.
Yeah. Better, do better. That's right. Right.
I'm going to do better now, and I'm going to spread the word.
That's right. And you know what? The other really wonderful thing, all of this is happening at the same time because it's AAC Awareness Month. And so we both have a few fun finds to share, right? So Cheryl, go ahead. What is your fun find this week?
Okay. Well, so, and this is definitely something that was, is being done this month, but it's not just a month thing. Please. You know how in the past we have promoted, and I've shared a lot of the calendars where they'll take the whole month and they have like different things to do. And some of them are AAC oriented, but it's not just communication in general. So I love those because I think that's great to have on a refrigerator at home and, just to spark an idea. Well, she took it to another level. This is Amanda Hartmann, and she created a share that, we'll make available to you, but I want to show you kind of what she was thinking. So I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to go to Instagram. I'm going to change my name, Laura, so that it's Cheryl Livingston Instagram, MSCCCSLP. Okay. So, this is her video that she's sharing right now. She created some activity, I should say, with some materials so that each day, and she made it pretty much just, work days. It was kind of more of a speech therapy, I could think, concept, because there's only 24 activities. There's more that days in the month, but she gave you a few days off. But her idea here is that you have, she's got a spinner. We could do anything that, kind of picks a number. We could grab them out of a jar, but she has these individual cards that she created with numbers that you could put on the back, so that wherever the spinner lands, that's the one you pick. So we're not talking order 1 through 24. It's a random. And I think there's something to be said for that random piece, because I think our kids, we get, why is the lottery so big? It's because you don't know what you're going to get when you scratch it off. So anyway, so she's got all these activities. Well, the activities are, talk about your favorite foods using AAC, talk about your favorite animals. And then another one is like, talk about your favorite page in the book that, you like. So not, you don't have to go into a whole story, but just something that's special. What we were looking at on our video here is she's done the spinner, and they're talking about going shopping and where's your favorite things to buy. And look, she's even got some more visuals to go along with it, a little flyer that, they're talking about. So my big thing here, guys, is I love the fact that it's a random, draw a card, pick a card, get a number, but then it's favorites. It's getting into what our students want to talk about. And then it's, just fun stuff about make a card for a friend and write a message with your AAC system. So this is huge as far as you should, Cheryl's, telling have just this always available. And like I said, we talk about 5-minute fillers, just, you got the next couple of minutes, pull out a card, and then let's do it for that few minutes. So I thought this was great. And I love the fact that she associated it with the AAC Awareness Month, because it's using that device 100 ways.
And for families actually, too, right, Cheryl? Like, so I have a calendar from my parents as teachers, which is the 0 to 3 support we have here in Missouri. And like, I have a little calendar to help for some of those pre-K skills, and we look at the calendar and we say, what is this skill this today? And it's usually something quick. And I also want to point out, it doesn't have to be something that it's not a compliance activity, right? We're going to talk a lot about compliance versus play today, but it's something that's meant to be enjoyable for both people. So even if you're just modeling and it's something quick that you can model, like talk, I mean, who doesn't love talking about shopping, right? You got Christmas coming up, like let's talk about shopping. And so I think that it's just, you could give it to families, like you guys could do it it's easy to carry over too, right? If you talk about which number you did, I just love it. I love the organization. I love the fact that it's open-ended,
portable. It's little. Just put it in your bag, your backpack. Yeah.
And she did a spinner, but cool. Right, we don't have to, like, you can use any access method, right? We could use an alternate spinner if we wanted to, grab one from the IRC. You could pull a jar. You could put it in a black box, pull them out. There's all kinds of things that we could do.
Your numbers could be like a bingo thing where you B3, you pull that number out and that's the one. Yeah. I just love the fact that it's very engaging. It's communication, but it's engaging because there's all kinds of things that go with it. And what you pointed out too about how modeling part, it just says talk about it doesn't say the student must talk about their favorite. It's like, so I can share, we could do this in the office, Laura. We could.
I think we should, Cheryl.
But again, the more we, as the support system for our students, for our kids using systems, the more we use their device, we will also do better. We'll get better at it. So yeah, let me tell you about it. And so that's going to give me a thought. That's going to give me a purpose that we could talk about. So I like that. I like that idea. So
how do I top that? Okay, so I have two quick things. I have two quick things. I'm not competitive at all. It's fine. So the first one you can actually see on my screen because Zoom had an update, and although my green screen isn't working behind me, it's got some funky glitches going on. They did add a new feature. So if you go under your video on Zoom and you go to choose virtual background, you can actually go to this new filters. Instead of under virtual backgrounds, there's a tab right next to it that says video filters. And if I go there, I can actually change it up. So right now I have, it kind of looks like a postage card. Picture frame.
Or you look like you're in a photo album, with the little tabs holding you in place.
Yes, it's actually called a scrapbook. They've named them all now that I'm looking at it. But I can be the lioness. And it moves with my screen. I don't want to, there's a face mask one and I don't really want to put that one on. I'm sick of wearing masks, but I can have a little hat, a little Zoom hat. I can, this one's fun. It doesn't really quite go with my outfit, but there's a we can do it bow. Yeah. Like a little riveter kind of era. I could be an alien, Cyclops alien. So anywho, I just love it because I think that it's really fun for kind of like that whole idea of anybody that wants to do selfies, AR, if you're still doing any kind of virtual therapy, if somebody gets quarantined, or if you just kind of want to play around with it as part of an activity, record yourself and your student and you guys can play around with those features and then comment on them, talk about what.
Well, another way just to, like I said, use Zoom now, even if we are in person, which, most places that I'm interacting with are, but maybe we could Zoom with kids in another class. So we could get that communication with, students using the same devices or however, we're looking at it. But I can see this being the fun thing to talk about that, we could make it even more, again, engaging.
Exactly. And who doesn't love talking and about doing selfies and photo booths and stuff like that. So I think it's just a really great now free feature in Zoom. The other one I just very quickly wanted to talk about because it's AAC Awareness Month is this wonderful clip art that Drawn to AAC has made available. And so it's on Teachers Pay Teachers. They do have a couple, there's Halloween clip art that you can pay for, but they also have a free printable poster that is super cute, that just has a huge circle, and it's kind of bringing that awareness to the fact this month is AAC Awareness Month. And then they've also just got some colored and black and white images that you can use for any other graphics you're trying to put it in your classroom to kind of support our users. So I definitely wanted to highlight that because I just think the more we can make things visible for our teams and our staffs and and the fact that we want our users themselves to see themselves in images too.
I was gonna say, if anything, it makes it that it's just a norm, I mean, I love that little drawing of the boy and the girl and the fact that, doesn't everybody have an AAC device? And
Right.
It's cute.
Right. So let's really get into why I'm so excited to release this episode. So as I mentioned earlier, Alex Zachos is an SLP, and she is just a wealth of knowledge when it comes to Gestalt language processors. And when we talk about Gestalt language processors, you're going to hear us talk about analytic language processors as well, because there's a difference. And what we're going to briefly touch on today and what we kind of need to still dive into in the world of AAC is the fact that the majority of AAC systems are set up and are supported with the thought that we have somebody who is an analytic language processor in mind. So that individual is learning word by word, and then every time they learn a word, then eventually they're going to combine those words that they've learned and build syntax and kind of expand from the ground up. When you have
and we often refer to that as typical language development. So all kids do it, then everybody else should do it. So that's where my mind has been.
Right. And I think that, and I don't want to speak for Alex, but I do think that there's components of both in typical language development, right? Because we often talk too about the fact that you're going to see toddlers, even my toddler uses scripts and echolalia and processes language in chunks to some component, but it's not the same. It's not the same as somebody who's really a Gestalt language processor who is learning through scripts, learning through chunked language. And so we're going to talk about it today, and we're going to kind of just touch the tip of the iceberg and kind of probably pique your interest so you want to know more, but we'll throw in a ton of resources and just know that this is definitely one we're going to have to kind of come back around to, because it's an area, right? It's an area that we need more info on.
And we're all digging deeper. I always want to make sure that sometimes I take things for granted, well, I know that, so you must know that. But again, I can honestly say I'm not as just on top of things. Like I wish now I were. I feel bad is what it's coming across as. So I'm not ever going to put any blame or any judgment on anybody that, oh, well, you should know this. It's like, no, it just hasn't been brought up. But I love how you mentioned before, it's thanks to social media, because we are seeing things that, I guess before, Laura, we would have had to have gone to a conference that somebody was presenting, and we would have had to choose that session over the other 15 that are, you know how it happens, sometimes you just happen on the topic that does change your life or changes your career, but other times it was there, but I missed it. But this is just easy for it just to pop up. And I'm like, oh, and she's been sharing videos, and, they all are doing a wonderful job of teaching us. But I think Alex is doing a lot of extra work to help it be easy for us to learn.
Yeah, it's very visible that she not only is a wealth of knowledge, but that just she truly cares about wanting to make a difference for a lot of kids that we would consider autistic and Gestalt language processors that have been stuck. And feeling the frustrations from the families, feeling the frustrations from the individuals themselves, and feeling frustrations from the SLPs and the staff that work with them that are feeling like they're not making progress.
Well, and we are to blame a little bit for the fact that the way we've interacted with those kids hasn't been helpful. You know, so sometimes
so
they were trying to tell us something and we didn't take the time to figure it out, is what I'm worried about.
Well, and I just think that a lot of times, like, we don't know how to proceed. And so I'm hoping that if you feel like you've been stuck with a student that is autistic, that you can listen to this interview and generate lots of ideas and just start that conversation with your AAC facilitator so that we can move forward and really support all of our teams and all of our students better. So sit back, and here is my interview with Alex Zachos. Hi guys, and welcome to our episode of Innovative AAC Solutions. And I cannot wait for you guys to hear and meet our guest, Alex Zachos. She is from Meaningful Speech, and everything she says is meaningful to me. I just have found so much knowledge from her already, and I wanted you guys to share that with us. So welcome to the podcast, Alex.
Thanks, Laura. Thank you for having me.
Can you just tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, your background, any fun facts? I know we were chatting about your new space, so anything you want to share?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a speech language pathologist. This is actually my 18th year, which is crazy to say. I have pretty much worked everywhere. So I was a public school speech pathologist for about 9 years. I did early intervention for a little bit. I worked PRN weekends in acute care, did a lot of swallow studies. I worked in outpatient centers, and in 2012, I had my first daughter. So I decided to take a maternity leave for a year from my school position and pursue private practice. And so here we are almost 10 years later, and I have been in private practice and loving it. I just moved into a new office space, clinic space, like Laura just mentioned, and my staff has grown. We're finally in a space that can accommodate all of us. We have multiple gyms and therapy rooms, and we're really, really excited about it. And she did also mention the meaningful speech part. So I want to touch on that too. So in January, I decided to start an Instagram account and start talking about delayed echolalia and scripting. And kids who communicate with delayed echolalia are Gestalt language processors, and we will delve into that today. And I just felt like a lot of people were not talking about it, didn't understand it. And I decided I had to go to social media and start talking about it. My course was born in April, and my membership program at the same time. So if you want to find out more about that, you can go to meaningfulspeech.com, but we will probably also touch on that during the interview today.
Yes. And, it's funny because I discovered it in the summer. I did a presentation for AAC in the Cloud, which the listeners should know at this point. We talk about it a lot. It's a totally free conference. Anybody can go back to it. And we talked all about stimming with AAC devices. And part of that presentation was on Gestalt language processors and how they're processing speech. So I know it's a hot topic in just the world of speech therapy, and then now in the world of AAC. So tell the listeners a little bit, how did you discover this?
Yes, absolutely. So I would say probably around 2015, 2016, I had a few kids on my caseload that were communicating with delayed echolalia. And all that I had heard about up until that point was ignore, redirect, tell them no movie talk. And I just knew in my heart that that was not working and not the way, but I really didn't know anything else. So I just started looking around and digging. And I was in a group on Facebook for private practitioners, and someone had posted Marge Blanc's book, Natural Language Acquisition. And I clicked on it and looked at it and bought it right away. I thought, this is what I need. This woman seems to know why these kids are scripting. And I pretty much devoured her book in less than a week. And then I contacted her and I said, I want to know everything. I'm going to start collecting data on the kids that I'm working with. I just was ready to go all in. And ever since then, Marge has been my mentor. We've collaborated on several projects. We presented together at ASHA in Los Angeles. And then I presented again in Boston with a couple other individuals. And we just recently did an ASHA webinar that's available on Learning Pass this past March. Marge and I, and then Dr. Lillian Stiegler, who's out of Southeastern Louisiana University. She actually wrote a journal article that has been shared really frequently. I know even Hannon has cited it. About where speech language pathologists stand when it comes to echolalia. And she kind of summarizes all of the research and Marge's work. Marge actually created the framework, natural language acquisition. It's a, I guess you could, I don't like to use the word treatment, but it's a treatment framework for helping kids move from echolalia to self-generated language.
Love it. And so we will definitely link those two resources. I'll make sure to get those resources, the article, as well as the book information, the golden ticket book information from March, because yes, I think that they go hand in hand. So let's keep diving into both. So we talked about how Gestalt language processors use echolalia. As far as like the difference, because oftentimes we talk about the difference between that and then analytic processors. So can you tell the listeners a little bit about the difference between the two of those?
Yes, let's talk about that. So as speech language pathologists and parents and whoever else is listening, the type of language development that we mostly are exposed to is analytic language development. So what that is a child starts with vocalizations and babbling. Eventually they're saying their first word, and then their language builds up from there. So 1 word, 2 words, 3 words, they're saying phrases, sentences, eventually conversation and storytelling. And that's kind of the development for a person who develops language analytically. But there is actually another way that people can develop language that is not really talked about that much. And that's what I'm trying to shed light upon now with my course and membership and my social media postings. And that is Gestalt Language Processing. And what that is another normal way of developing language, but it's not the same as analytic. Children actually start with longer chunks of language that are units to them. So for analytic processors, a word is a unit. For a Gestalt language processor, this chunk of language is a unit, and it can show up in many different ways. So it can present as a movie script, like To Infinity and Beyond, or it can present as something that they heard in their environment, like put your shoes on. It can also be an unintelligible long string of language, like which might sound like jargon to someone. Gestalt language processors have a rich intonation. So a lot of the times, even if we can't figure out what they're saying, we can hear that intonation. I once worked with a client that was very unintelligible, but I could hear from what he was saying that he was repeating something from an action show. So I checked in with his dad on what he was watching on Netflix. And sure enough, he was actually trying to use like some of those action words like pow, wham, bang, and create some of those fight scenes from what he was watching. But had I not known about Gestalt language processing and picking up on intonation, and had I only been looking at it from an analytic perspective, I would have thought, oh, he's highly unintelligible. Maybe I need to look at articulation or phono. Maybe he's a praxic, all those things that a lot of speech pathologists start investigating or going down that avenue without knowing about Gestalt language development. And a lot of times that's not the approach our kids need, because when they're Gestalt language processors, what they actually need is for us to help them go from this echolalia down through the stages that Marge Blanc outlines in natural language acquisition to original language. So I'll go over those stages really quickly, but the first one I just touched on is echolalia, which can present in all of those different ways. And then we go to mitigations or partial gestalt, so mixing and matching parts of that chunk of language. So if a child was saying something like, let's go to the gym as a script, in stage 2, they might say, let's go get mom. So they're mixing and matching parts from scripts. And then in stage 3, I call this the magic stage. They finally get to recognizing words as units. So that's where they maybe start to look a little analytic. So they have single words and then they're combining 2 words together. And the 4th stage is beginning grammar. And that's when we're really hearing original language. So what I like to tell people is a hallmark for stage 4 is bad grammar. So when we're hearing things like I fall down, we know that that's stage 4, that's original language. That's not being echoed from anywhere. The child put those 3 words together on their own. There are stages 5 and 6, but those are more advanced grammar. So I mainly talk about the main 4 stages.
Oh, there's so much to unpack. I love that. I love the examples that you're sharing. I love that you, my favorite thing you've said so far is just the fact that it's another normal development. And thinking about a really good example that I always use is thinking about toddlers, because toddlers tend to use echolalia at specific stages when they're trying to process bigger chunks of language, like they'll repeat back to you. So I always tell people, I'm like, it's not atypical. It's just not what we would see from a progression. Or if a parent was looking at like a language development chart, like it's not good. You're not going to have the mama, then the dada, and then you're not going to see that with somebody that would process the language like a Gestalt language processor. So you mentioned going into NLA and the stages there. So when we're thinking about the overview of that, and someone might be saying, okay, well, I think that they might be processing language. What would be the first thing? Like you mentioned intonation, right? So the pattern that which that they're vocalizing, right? Like we all use rising intonation if we're going to be asking a question. So
Right.
You might see that. So talk a little bit about, like, if you're seeing that, like you mentioned, talking to the dad, right? What would be your next steps if you think someone might be a Gestalt language processor? What would be my next steps?
Yeah, I wanted to address one quick thing you had mentioned, and then definitely I'll go into that. But so you had mentioned that toddlers communicate with echolalia. I just wanted to talk a little bit about how this is a normal and natural developmental process. So I would say that the majority of our Gestalt language processors that are typically developing move through the stages so quickly that nobody actually notices that they're Gestalt processors. It's our kids that get quote unquote stuck in stages 1 or 2 that end up on our speech language caseloads, or that parents, start seeking help for them. So if you do have a toddler and you're hearing delayed echolalia, that is fine. That's normal and natural. I do usually say, like, beyond the toddler years, if we are hearing this as their main form of communication, likely it's time to sort of seek out some assistance. But getting back to your question before, how do I know that they're a Gestalt language processor? And then what do I do about it? So, I'm looking for those 4 things. I think there's one I forgot to mention. I'm listening to their language and I'm looking to see, okay, are there unintelligible long strings of language characterized by rich intonation? Are there stuck single words? That's the one I forgot to mention. So there are so many kids that I've, met that either we're in some sort of programming or we're doing flashcards at home with mom and dad or an app or something, and they've amassed hundreds of single words, but then they end up being referred for speech and language therapy because those single words are going nowhere. They just have tons of single words. They're not combining them. They're not moving forward. And people are trying to use analytic processing strategies with these kids. So they're constantly working on expansion, but that technique actually doesn't work with a Gestalt language processor. And so these kids just stay stuck with these single words. The other thing that we're looking for are the scripts. So am I hearing language that they heard in the past from another experience, and now they're bringing it to this experience, and that can be in or out of context. I think people that have heard about echolalia mainly think about it out of context or think about those movie lines or media lines, but it can actually be very much in context. One of my favorite examples was sent to me by a parent follower who said her daughter, every single time she sits on the couch, says, "I need a blanket." Because in one experience, it was chilly. So a blanket, they put a blanket on themselves when they were watching a movie. But now it's become a gestalt for her. So she ties sitting on the couch to that experience she had in the past. And she always uses that same gestalt. So that's not out of context. I think a babysitter or anyone else coming in might go, "Oh, all right, here's a blanket." And they take it literally and they bring her a blanket. But if you really dig deep into your language, you see that's actually a script or a gestalt. And so, okay, what do we do about it? So we've identified that they're a Gestalt language processor. They have one or more things that fall into all of these areas. So I always talk about a 3-step process when they're in stage 1. And the first step is to acknowledge. We always want to acknowledge what the child is communicating, whether we understand it or not. So even if we're hearing and we have no idea what they're saying, the way to acknowledge it is to head nod or smile. Oh, yeah. You're giving them the eye contact. You're there. You're engaged with them. If you do understand what they're saying, a lot of times I'll repeat it back like, "Oh, I need a blanket." And then step 2 would be do the detective work. I talk a lot about detective work throughout all of what I share on social media. And that is basically, you need to find out where that script is coming from, if you can. So talk to the parents, figure out what they're watching on TV, find out from their caregiver or teacher, like, where did this script come from? Now, we're not always going to be able to figure that out. However, in a lot of cases, we will. And that leads us to step 3, which is we're then going to model what we think they want to say. And so I need a blanket, she doesn't really need a blanket. It was more for her, like, it's time to watch something together. And so that might be the language that I'm modeling once I've uncovered what that script meant for her. And we will see that when we are truly modeling the language that the child wants and that they intended to say, we're going to get that bingo eye contact. We're going to get, a head nod, a smile, a yeah. They're going to let us know. And I have a few video examples of this in my course where I show with my own clients, like, that acknowledging in that moment when I have given them the words that they need to say. And it's just, I love using the word bingo, but like that bingo moment for them, and they are there with me and realize that I understand what they are communicating. And I think a lot of times these steps are not being taken with Gestalt language processors, that because people don't understand this language development, they're immediately going to analytic strategies.
Yeah. And I think you're on the money as far as, the fact that they're not feeling acknowledged. Like we're trying to pigeonhole and force our own agenda because that's what we're told, that's what we're taught. And so we're trying to make them fit the mold. Whereas when you meet them where they're at, there's a couple things, right? You're meeting them where they're at. Like you're also there. There's a big gap too. If you're trying to approach it from a single word level, and like you said, that's way down the line. It's not where they're at as far as stage 1 of NLA, that natural language acquisition. So there's that. There's the fact that you're not acknowledging, so you're not bridging that connection, and you're not doing the detective work. You're not figuring out what they're actually talking about. So I think there's that. I even wonder too, Alex, if thinking about it, if we could make the comparison, when you think about how natural language develops, there's always a component of overgeneralization with any development. So you hear the kids that say cow for any 4-legged animal, and you're like, it's not a cow, that's actually a dog, or that's a cat, and here's why they're different. So you acknowledge, and then you shift, and you kind of give that correction. So is it safe to say that's a similar comparison when you're looking at, you're acknowledging what they're saying, which is an overgeneralization to the activity, and then you're giving them the meaning behind what you think they actually want to say?
Yeah, it can get yes, but it can get a little trickier with Gestalt processors because there is so much meaning behind their script. So they're looking at, that's where Gestalt comes from. It means whole. So they're looking at like the whole experience. So Marge's husband did some illustrations for her book, and one of the pictures that he has always kind of sat with me, and it's a little girl holding a ball, and in her thought bubble it says ball, like this means ball. But then the Gestalt language processor on the right, in his thought bubble, he's picturing a ballpark where people are playing baseball. And so he might use a baseball script in that situation, and people might go to correct him, but his experience is tied to the ballpark. So that's where the detective piece comes in, which is so different than analytic processors, because if we're looking at an object with an analytic processor and they say cow, then it's like a labeling issue. Well, actually, this is a dog. But it's not a labeling issue with Gestalt processors. That's why we have to do the detective work to figure out, where did that script come from? What experience is it tied to? Oh, it's not that you don't know ball. It's that it's tied to your experience at the ballpark. So I always say, just like we say with AAC communicators, presume competence. So we are presuming competence with our Gestalt processors, that they understand. It's really up to us to figure out where that is coming from.
Yes. And we talk a lot about that with AAC users because they're complex, and that we oftentimes have to be a smart communication partner. So that brings me to my next question, because you did a wonderful post with Kate McLaughlin from AAC Coach, and you talked about what somebody who uses AAC might look like. So for anyone who hasn't seen that post, let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So Kate and I collaborated because she is an AAC expert, and I will come right out and say, I am not. And so, given what I knew about Gestalt language processing and what Kate knows in her AAC work, we collaborated on a post, and we titled it "Some Signs That Your Early AAC User Might Be a Gestalt Language Processor." So some of the signs that we listed were studying and replaying media, for example, videos, TV shows, movies, songs. If they have acquired any speech, it is in the form of chunks or scripts, which are also called gestalts. I use those scripts, the word scripts and gestalts interchangeably. And then verbalizations that have rich intonation but are possibly unintelligible. So we've talked about that as well. And then limited progress with AAC despite intensive modeling of a robust system with authentic exchanges. And this is really important to note, because AAC devices right now are really designed for the analytic language communicator. They really start with one word, and then they build up from there. And so if that is what is happening with your AAC user, and they are truly a Gestalt language processor, they will get stuck in that single word stage where it's just a bunch of single words for them, stage 1 echolalia.
Yeah, absolutely. And And there's another one, there's another company and device out there that does have some phrases and sentences, and it's based on the environment, but like you said, it's not always in context, so it might be about a totally different experience. So even if you use that system, and let's say you're in the living room talking about something related to the television, and they're trying to pull from a different experience, or you're talking about a ball because you're playing ball, there's a page about a ball, and they want to talk about the ballpark because they don't have that available. That's not going to be an icon with that sentence or phrase on that page. So they're going to have to go locate it. So there's a lot of, like you said, detective work, a lot of trying to predict. A lot of other systems are built from the ground up in those single words. So then, yeah, they're going to get stuck.
Yeah. So we have a lot of limitations right now, but I do want to say that there are a lot of people that are aware of this, and there is a group of speech language pathologists currently working with Marge Blanc, trying to come up with some ideas about, changing the way AAC is for our Gestalt processors.
Well, that's exciting.
Yes.
You might have to dive more into that discussion off air.
Yes.
Okay. So going back to thinking about, Gestalt language processing, is there someone that you've worked with in the past that you've done both in AAC and this approach with? Kind of any information or any thoughts that you have going forward with what we should be doing, or what would it look like?
Yeah, so I want to go back to the post I wrote with Kate, because we do kind of share some tips on what you would do in that situation. So I'm mainly just going to talk about stage 1. So a kid that's in stage 1 echolalia. Like I shared, we don't really have clear recommendations right now for AAC implementation with those communicating mainly with an AAC device, but here are just some things to think about. So consider recording audio clips of gestalts onto the child's AAC. Model robust AAC as part of an immersive language experience, but focus intervention on modeling new gestalts or mitigating gestalts. And that would be stage 2. Model your child's gestalts on the AAC, and consider AAC systems that include carrier phrases, pragmatic branching, and or predictability associated vocabulary that may support mitigating existing gestalts or introducing new ones. And that can be a little bit tricky, because there you're kind of thinking the child's ready for mitigation in stage 2. So we have a couple parents that have reached out to Marge and sort of shown some things that they were doing with their child's AAC device. And one in particular put a bunch of clips on there from her child's favorite show that had scripts that her child was using. And so she was able to go on that device and access them. But that still requires detective work on the parent or SLP's part to go in and find those clips and then truly understand what they mean, and then be able to move forward with the child, to talk about the ballpark, or to actually go get a ball, or whatever you have discovered that detective work has led you to.
And I think that you make a really good point about going back to the detective work, because I also know from following you that we have to be really careful with our carrier phrases and with what we think the child might be saying, because we don't want to jump to, which is what we see often with AAC systems, is jump to this, I want insert noun. And so, because as you've mentioned, that can create more issues than benefits. Can you speak to that a little bit? If we're just going and assuming that they need to say, or they want to say the I want plus an object.
Absolutely. So, I've shared a little about this, and I think Marge has shared quite a lot of this in some past articles she's written, but we actually don't want to limit our kids to I want. I mean, that's kind of assuming that everything they want to say is a want, when the majority of kids actually have a lot of thoughts to share, have a lot more that they want to express that's not just a want. And so I kind of remind people, think about a child with typically developing language that's the age of whatever child you're working with, and think about the types of things that they're communicating. So I have a 9.5-year-old and a 6.5-year-old at home. Okay, so let's talk about my first grader. She is telling endless stories about things that are happening at school. She is telling me about things they've read, who broke their arm on the playground, et cetera, et cetera. The majority of her communication with me is not, I want. Maybe twice a day, it's like, oh, I want any applesauce in my lunch or something along those lines. But the majority of a 6-year-old's communication is storytelling and engaging and commenting. And so I really think we need to keep that in mind for, the kids that we're working with. Like, why are we limiting them to just, wanting certain food items? And so with the natural language acquisition approach, we are not sort of pigeonholing them into this, all you have are wants and needs. We're helping them move through to get to original language by using what they're already communicating with us. So if you have a script about a ballpark, again, sorry to keep bringing up that example, but you want to talk to me about baseball. It's not like you actually want me to go hand you a ball, or even that you want to go see a baseball game right now. It's not always a want.
Absolutely. And I think it's so important because I think I tend to think that people are trying to support the student and best interest. And they're thinking that if they can just give them what they want, like, which sometimes isn't edible, and that requesting and mandating, that they will solve the communication breakdown and that the student will be happy. When we actually find, I always call it their Oreo. I don't know why, but because I just think Oreos are the jam. But when you find the thing that they really want to talk about, that when you really engage them and you find their hook, then you've connected to them. And really what anybody wants is the connection. Like, the connection is the piece that we're missing so 100%. Often.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think we really have to get away from connecting over food.
Yes.
Like, they don't always want an M&M. I mean, all kids love candy pretty much, but there are other things that they're interested in talking about. And that's where I really want to encourage your listeners to pay attention to what they are scripting and figure out why they are scripting that. I call that their true spontaneous language. It's unprompted. No one's drilling it. No one's forcing it. It is coming from them. There is a reason they have picked that up from their environment.
Yeah. And we've done it in the past where if their favorite show, I had a little girl who used Lampwords for Life, and she was using, she would go out of it and she would get into Dora. And I said, well, let's explore that. Let's watch what she does when she gets into Dora. And sure enough, her first spontaneous language were scripts about swiping and about in Spanish. Some of them were in Spanish because that was how she was processing language. And that was how she put it. She came up with it on her own. Now she ended up moving through all of them herself, and she no longer uses the AAC system, but not everybody's like that. Like you said, some kids get stuck, and how do we move them forward? So I know you go into way more detail through your modules on meaningfulspeech.com. There's 6 modules now. Is that right?
There are. The 7th and final module will be released in October. And then if you are a speech language pathologist, there will be an assessment test, and we are creating a registry that will be free and available on the main page for parents to download and find a speech language pathologist in their area that is able to work confidently with Gestalt language processors.
Okay, that's good to know. And you guys, you guys have really put in a lot of work. I didn't realize that it had only been up since January. Or has it been up to April?
Well, the Instagram has been there since January. The course was released in April.
Okay. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot.
It's been a lot.
Yeah. And you're a mom of 2. So
yes. Uh-huh.
Oh my gosh. So, and I know it's subscription based, correct? So if somebody were interested, they can get, like you said, they can get the continuing ed supports and the future certification for the
Yes.
subscription?
So the way that it is set up currently is I do have it set up as a membership because there are some other things that come with it. So not only do you get the course, but you get ongoing support through our member community, which is something that I thought was so necessary, because when you are learning something so new, you can't just take a course and that's it. Like, you have to have the opportunity to ask questions, post language samples, bring up certain tricky clients. And that's what our member community is for. Catherine Arnold, who is a speech language pathologist, currently living in Hawaii, she is helping me answer people's questions. She's also a Gestalt language expert. And so she and I are both on that member community daily, helping people out and answering questions. And then the other thing that you get is every month I have a live or Zoom that can also be viewed on demand with expert guest speakers. So I have so far had Rachel Dorsey, who's an autistic speech language pathologist. I've had an autistic AAC user, Courtney Johnson. I have also had a hyperlexia expert, Marge Blanc has been on. And then actually tomorrow is our September, well, I don't know when this is going to air, but September 24th is our monthly Zoom, and we are going to have an occupational therapist and talk a lot about that sensory integration and emotional and sensory dysregulation.
Nice. Now, are those ones that can be like looked back on, or are those just live only?
Absolutely. So yes, they're available on demand. So when people are unable to log in live, they're housed forever with the rest of my modules. And so, if you're a member, you're able to hop on there anytime and check them out.
That's awesome. I know listeners are always kind of looking for things that they can do asynchronously, or, things that they can do in the summer. So this would be a really great opportunity for them if they're looking for something extra. Yeah.
And we have a lot of parent members too. A lot of parents have learned how to help their child at home. And so I love that it's a really mixed community. So it's not just professionals, but if you are a speech language pathologist, you can download a CMH form after each module. So it's a great way to get in that continuing ed.
I love it. I love it. I love that you guys are getting these resources out there too, because I think it's just such an untouched area that we need to dive further in. So we've talked a lot of, I know we could probably talk all day, because you're an SLP, and this is a really just in-depth topic that you said, like you said, you have to go further into it if you're really feeling like, it's an area of benefit for somebody you work with or somebody at home that you love and you really want to support them. So I know you're very busy. And so I always ask everybody that comes on the podcast what your favorite AAC moment is, but knowing that this overlaps with Gestalt language processors, I'm going to flip it a little bit. And I'm going to ask you, what's your favorite moment with a Gestalt language processor?
Yeah, so you can all actually watch my favorite moment, because it is a video I took in 2017 with one of my first clients that I recognized was a Gestalt language processor, because let me tell you, I probably had a bunch I didn't recognize before I knew about all of this. But she's part of my original group that I started collecting data on, and she's featured in module 2. And it's one of my favorite moments because it sort of showed me where I had to grow and also showed me the power of acknowledging. But she and I are doing this Melissa and Doug sticker pad, and we're taking off these stickers and putting them in this picture. And she goes to get one off and she says, "The truck stuck in the mud." And there's no truck and there's no mud. And it's like this girl sticker she's trying to get off. And so I knew it was a script right away. And she kept trying to get the sticker off and saying to me, "The truck stuck in the mud, the truck stuck in the mud." And I said, "Oh, it's stuck." And she keeps saying it over and over again. So what did that teach me? I did not give her the words that she wanted in that moment. So she kept saying her script over and over again. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to acknowledge it by saying it back. And I said, "The truck stuck in the mud." And she goes, "Yeah." and looks at me like, yeah, lady, you finally got it. You're connecting with me. You know what I'm saying. And that's what I love, that moment, because that's what I want people to do. Even if you are clueless, you have no clue what this is meaning in the moment, acknowledge it, connect with that kid. And later on, I did go on to do step 2, which was the detective work, and found out it was from a YouTube clip. And what she was actually trying to tell me is, why is this one stuck? Like all the rest came off, but why is this one stuck? And so it was just a very cool moment for me that I'm so psyched I captured. And so now everybody can watch it in module 2.
Oh my gosh, I love it. And so I said that was going to be like the last thing, but now I have another question.
Yeah.
So, thinking about this connection and what we want ultimately for anybody that we work with, and anybody that we love, and anybody that we want to have their spontaneous language, what would be the things you wouldn't do? Like, in AAC, we always say, don't take the device away. Like you mentioned earlier, when you first were doing it, everybody told you to extinguish it or ignore the script. What would you say are your don'ts? Like, don't do this.
Yeah. So I actually had a freebie handout out on this on the Meaningful Speech site that's still available to members, but I called it do's, don'ts, and do laters. And so the key don'ts on there are, don't try to get rid of it. Don't try to extinguish it. The do would be find out what it means. And then don't try to prompt or force a kid to say anything. So, I'm really trying to encourage people not to do the say I need help, because we actually have a little boy that was in the clinic yesterday, and that's how he's communicating. He's a new client, and that is his script. Say, I need a napkin. And he'll even use the word say, because in the previous programming he was in, that's how he was being prompted. And so really just stay away from getting rid of it. Stay away from forcing a kid to say anything. And my do's are like, listen to their spontaneous language and figure out what they're trying to communicate with you. Like, it's on you.
So you say you're not an AAC expert, but like you speak exactly like one of us. I just have to say, like, you're a kin from my own heart, because that's exactly what we talk about all the time with AAC systems. Like, don't force it, because then it becomes work, and then it becomes this tool of like in a battle of control. Like, don't force it. Just step back, model, acknowledge, extend the social connection. Like let them have the control. Like all the same things you would do with somebody who is processing, like a Gestalt language processor, you do with somebody that's using AAC. So just saying
there's a lot of overlap.
Yeah. Yes. So I love it. So any other final thoughts? We'll definitely tie some more resources. We'll share the links in the episode notes, and everybody should, if they are on social media, follow you on Instagram, because I know you do a lot more content and a lot more examples there.
Yeah, definitely. No, I guess on a final note, is we're finally to a point in 2021 where there is a plethora of resources out there for you. So Marge Blanc's book, she's got 3 courses coming out now on the Northern Speech Services. We've got our 2 ASHA webinars. We have my whole thing on meaningfulspeech.com. We've got Instagram. We've got a group going on Facebook. So final takeaway, the information is out there. If you are interested, please go seek out any or all of those resources, and then just start spreading the word, because the more that we keep talking about this, the more we're able to easily identify who these kids are and start them down the right path.
Totally agree. Well, thank you so much, Alex, for being on. If somebody has a specific question, what would be the best contact for you?
Yeah, just send me a DM on Instagram. That's where I'm most active.
Perfect. And you can find her on Instagram at Meaningful Speech. And yeah, just want to thank you for your time. Let's share those resources, and everybody have a great day and continue to dive into this, because this is a topic that is so meaningful and so appropriate for so many of the kids we support.
Thank you, Laura. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Hey guys, so I'm going to preface this quick tip with the fact that this is very much still a work in progress, and there are a lot of people looking at how to best support Gestalt language processors on AAC systems. And so this is just one strategy that we are exploring. So what I wanted to quickly show you is the idea or concept of adding familiar videos and audio to a system to help support learning and acknowledgement of somebody that is using those types of scripts in their early communication. So I'm going to show you with the ones that we use most in the district. And if you have questions, definitely follow up with either Alexandria Zachos, Marge Blanc, or one of your facilitators so we can kind of field those questions and take them as they come, because everything is meant to be an individualized approach. And this is not meant to take away from the voice output of a system, but to really support language learning when you have an early communicator that is showing a lot of those, a lot of stage one components to natural language acquisition. So I do want to preface this video with that. But the first thing I want to show you is under TouchChat. So TouchChat Word Power actually has the ability to go to a page under groups. There is, go to more, there is a video, play videos page that you can tap into. And that allows us to actually embed a few videos into the device itself. What I like about this is it tells you exactly what to do right here. You play a library video from your library. So you can record videos in there, or you can download videos if you know that those are preferred supports and or language learning opportunities for your Gestalt language processor. So you would click on a video, it would play that video. And then what I also like about it is it has the ability to, you can edit the page. So those familiar scripts can also be edited or added. So if my student was, or user was really loving Thomas the Train, I can edit this message to say something like, all aboard, if I'm hearing that from that video. So it can correlate with that. And you can copy these pages and do this if this is something. Now, remember too, that you only have so much memory, so you don't want to go overboard, but this is a really nice strategy to use with your early language users that are showing benefits to learning through scripts. So you can do that here. Now, if I'm looking at some of the other systems, they don't have the ability to embed videos. The other one that does is Go Talk Now. So I created a Go Talk Now player set. And again, you can pull from your image library if you have an iPad. So I just took a quick video that I had done for our communication boards. And if you click on it, it will show that video. My son says, "Hey, what's this?" Once the video stops playing, you can go back to your page and you can see that there's some scripts here that we can talk about. One for acknowledgement, and then a few other ones that would be associated with that activity that we could help expand upon. And again, it might be, "Hey, what's this?" It might be "Ready, Set, Go." It also could be changing one word. So, "Hey, what's that?" Something along those lines to kind of support growth. Then you have audio, ones that you can embed audio. So ones like LAMP, Proloco to Go, and Snap. So if I go to LAMP, and let's say I really liked bubbles and videos about bubbles and songs about bubbles, I can go to menu, I can go to my page and toys page and play some music here by editing my page, creating a new button. And then on this button, I can scroll down and add an action where I am recording audio. And here is where you would record your sound, and you would use a separate device. So like I have my phone here, and let's say right now I have an Ants Go Marching video. So if they like Ants Go Marching, I can play that.
The ants go marching one by one, hurrah, hurrah. The ants go marching one by one, hurrah, hurrah.
Okay, and then I can stop, and you get the idea. So now I have a recorded sound on this icon. I can save it. I can change the label. I can add an image. It populated that one for me. Okay, so once you have the recording recorded, you can go back to it and you can actually change the icon. If I go to edit page, I can change this. Instead of saying record speech, you can actually say add the action to play recorded speech. And I'm going to use an existing sound that I just recorded. I'm going to scroll down. I've renamed this to Ants Go Marching. And now I don't need it twice, but I'm going to hit save. And now when I go to done, it will play that audio recording. Okay, so that's LAMP. A very similar setup is on Snap. So if I go into Snap and I decide that I want to tap into my music, I can go to my topics and my music page. You can technically put this anywhere, but I would suggest putting it under supports and then creating a new support icon. And this isn't just for someone who's in a young kiddo. If you have somebody that you would feel like is a Gestalt language processor that is older, that just hasn't had those opportunities, we can do that too. So I went under my music's topic page. So topics, music, supports, and I can add an icon here and a video or an audio recording here, excuse me, where I could do their favorite preferred song. So if my student or adolescent was jazzed by Taylor Swift's Shake It Off, who doesn't love that? So this one's nice because it has a recording time of 2 minutes. I can go to the little microphone next to the message, and then I can record from a separate source.
Too late. Got nothing in my brain. That's what people say. That's what people say. I go on too many dates.
Okay, so again, that recording is in there. Encourage you not to make them too long because then you run into space issues, but I can save it. I can label it. I can add a symbol if I want. Add a picture, add a photograph. And now when I activate that, it would activate the audio file. And then what's nice about this is then I can go back to the topic where it's about music and I can either model what would be a really great script for that song, or if I hear them saying something, I can program here in that bottom corner some of the scripts they might say about Taylor Swift or from the song itself or from the video itself. So all good options, I think, as a starting point. I will say I am not the expert, so I would defer any specific questions to Alexandria or Marge, but those would be some starting points that might be beneficial as a quick tech tip for our AAC systems.
Hi guys, it's Cheryl Livingston, and we were talking about play-based therapy. So I want to do a little adventure here with some ideas that you might be able to use in your therapy sessions or at home with somebody that's you're liking to play with. Play is fun, and that's what it's meant to be. So we want communication to be about something that they're enjoying and about activities that they want to share with you, what they think and what they want to see happen, and you know what's the different things that could be going on at that time. So first, I wanted to show you share my screen, a post on Instagram, and this is Anna D SLP. And what she is showing us is all kinds of different ways that we can use toys. So this particular one is 5 goals to target using a dollhouse. So I'm going to show you her post and then we'll play with a dollhouse for a minute. And so you can kind of, again, get a visual of what's going on. Here's my dollhouse. Well, actually, I checked it out from the IRC here at Special School District. So it's available if you want to come and find it and use it with your students for a few times and have some fun. But this one's high tech. of course, it's got a lot of bells and whistles. So just to know that, it can play songs. Do you recognize that song? Something about a doggy, maybe? And a window? But we also have some sound effects. Ring the doorbell. We got a squeaky door that we need to put some grease on. We can talk about what's going on upstairs in the bathtub. You hear the water. Oh, and there's a rubber ducky. So, all kinds of stuff. And here's the bedroom. Somebody's sleeping. You can hear him snoring. So, and laughing. The dollhouse is fun just to push buttons, but there's so much more to communication than just making sounds. I want you to take it the next step and play and have an interaction of talking about what's going on and being engaging and silly maybe about what we see happening. So to show that, I've got my character here. He's my s'more guy. Marshmallow, chocolate, and a graham cracker, if you can see that. So he's ready for some adventures here in the house. So let's talk about things that we could do with him. And like we were showing you from the Instagram post, there's a lot of stuff that if you have a individual that you're working with that's an analytic learner, then we know we can talk about all kinds of prepositions, about him going up to the top floor and going in, and he could look, sleep, or we could come around and come back down and go say, hi, puppy. And maybe we could pet the puppy. All kinds of words that we could talk about with actions and adventures that our figurine here is having with us. But we can also then take it to another level. And what if we're working with a student that we consider a Gestalt communication partner, and by the thinking that they're going to give us some information and we can then go with that. So if we go up here and we're in the bathroom area and there happens to be a rubber ducky, and we hear the student say something like, wee! It's like, oh, did he say wee when he jumped into the tub? Or could we start maybe hearing like, rubber ducky, you're the one? We could take songs that maybe they're kind of giving us some music that goes along with it, and we could build on that. Or if we could go downstairs and we could go to the front door and we could say 1, 2, 3, open the door. But a lot of this they're giving us, and we're going to respond. We're going to engage with what they tell us, and then see how that is something that they're telling with their communication that maybe is more how they've chunked it. They've put it together, and then we're going to have a chance to enter into their way of seeing this rather than us telling them that they have to engage with it a certain way. So I want to make sure you're looking at this as being a huge opportunity to do all kinds of things. Like I said, this is one dollhouse, but I'm sure you have access to others that you could bring in for therapy. But the big thing we're looking at here is how is your student that you're playing with and having fun. That's the reason we want to talk about play-based therapy, is that's the way the kids engage with us, is we're going to enter into their world, and we're going to look at communication-wise what's best for them and how can we expand on their communication, but how can we recognize what they're all about. And that's the very first thing we need to do, is we need to be more mindful of what they're doing and see how that can go with communication. Talk to you later.
We will share the link of this full video on our episode notes, but this is shared with permission from Jennifer Kronk, the parent, of how you can potentially modify a high-tech device to support a Gestalt language processor.
There's the train going fast. There it is. That was so cool, huh? Here's the soapy water. There's the water fountain. Water's going up. Water's going down.
As a reminder, every individual is unique, so please talk to your team about how you can make your AAC system support your users' individual needs. What do you think, Cheryl?
Oh, that was great. Thank you, Laura, so much for arranging that. You reached out to her and making that possible, because I learned a lot. I appreciate all that information she shared.
I feel like I learned something new from her every single day. If you guys don't already follow her on Instagram, she's in like so many resources, just so many resources.
Yeah.
So
like I said, she's sharing it's a frequent post type of thing. It's not like every 2 months. No, she's, I don't know, about daily. She usually has something that she's put up there. So yeah.
And just last week, I went out after kind of learning and learning from her. I went out with a team that was struggling. We had been doing PECs, and they're like, well, maybe he needs something different. And so I went out, and immediately the team had not mentioned that he had any kind of scripts or that he might be a Gestalt language processor, because that is something that's new in our world and kind of our vocabulary.
We just weren't asking. Yeah.
Right. We weren't thinking in that frame, in that mindset. So I went out and I started within 5 minutes. I was like, I think I heard the intonation. I was like, I think I'm hearing some scripts in there. And so sure enough, I hear him, we had brought out some food, because food is a highly motivating reinforcer for him. And I hear him go, yum. Now he didn't have food in his hand yet, but I heard him go, yum. And I was like, oh, he is a Gestalt language processor. So what did I do? I said, yeah, that's right. Yum, food is so good. Yum, food. And Cheryl, as quick as could be, his eye contact was like, oh, and
Who
he
said that?
was engaged. Exactly. So I pulled out my communication device, and I just pulled it out to see what he would do. And the engagement went up so dramatically as soon as I started to acknowledge the scripts that I heard from him, acknowledge what I thought I was hearing, because some of it was unintelligible. So I had to be a good detective, and some of it I didn't pick up yet. So that would be the piece where I would have to go back to the family and say, what are his favorite shows? Like, what are you seeing at home? Where could that intonation be kind of telling us what the script could be. But the ones I did hear, I was able to acknowledge and then kind of shape and support. And it was just such a wonderful first session. Like the engagement went up, the joint
You're saying
attention
he
went up.
gave you immediate feedback that he was listening to you too. He knew what you had said. So that was that was meaningful to him because you said it. Yeah.
Yes. So we were able to talk as a team and we said, we definitely need something with voice output. We need something. And I started to share some of those resources that Alex has shared. And I think we're on the right track for this student. And I think there are more students out there that this could benefit. So
no, definitely.
This is just the start of the discussion. We hope that you've learned a lot in this episode. I know I continue to learn a lot from Alex and everything that she and Marge are doing on social media and on meaningfulspeech.com. So definitely check it out when you have time and reach out to your facilitators with questions. For Innovative AAC Solutions, I'm Laura Hayes.
I'm Cheryl Livingston, and we're going to grow on our information together.
Have a great one.
Bye.